Welcome, welcome, family, back to the channel Indigo Angel. Come on into this dimension and come on into a very special show today with a very special guest, Miss Ella LeBain. And me and Ella go back quite a ways now, and we've been exchanging our books and exchanging information and exchanging the intel and the disclosure that's been coming forward. And recently, we've been discussing the forest breeder programs and the new disclosure that's come forward, where you have all these SS2, SSP Congress representatives coming forward and speaking about how there are active forest breeder programs in the United States, which has kind of reopened this can of worms because this is super ancient. The forest breeder programs is something that goes back very far on the planet. And me and Ella are both experiencers of this program. We both have firsthand accounts of this. And so that's another reason why I think me and you have bonded is because we both have like a tale to tell within all of this. So
Indeed.
thanks for coming to share everything that you got about this and even go further than the force breeder programs, going deep into the hybridization aspect of it, which is very important right now. And I think it's information everyone is really wanting right now. This is so important. So thank you for coming on my show. How are you doing today? It's been a little while.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Good to see you.
Yeah, so good to see
And
you. So when did you wake up to the awareness of force breeder programs and how did you start to put the pieces together?
well, actually, it was October of 1995 when I didn't even realize I was pregnant and I was having a miscarriage. So I just thought I was having my regular cycle. I felt a little crampy and took a ibuprofen or Motrin or something like that. Went to bed early, and I was woken up by these two little white gray beings. They were white, and they had black button eyes, not almond shaped eyes, very distinct, almost looked like Casper the ghost, Casper the friendly ghost. They had a that kind of look to them. And there were two, they were both standing there at the edge of my bed, and it was like they were there to receive something. And I woke up and I felt really crampy and really like something weird was happening. And I got up, went to the bathroom, and I passed the whole thing. And I didn't even know I was pregnant. And I looked back and I was like, what just came out of me? I had no idea. It was pretty shocking. And I immediately called my husband. And then we called the emergency room, the hospital. They told me to scoop everything up with a Ziploc bag and bring it all in. And so that's what we did. And they examined me and basically told me that I was 8 weeks pregnant, and I had just suffered a miscarriage, and that I was very lucky because that when I scooped everything up, they said the whole tissue was intact, that there was nothing left behind, that they didn't need to do the DNC, which is usually what they do after miscarriages, and everything was intact. And they said the only thing missing was the fetus. So that was the wake up call. And of course, after you finish a pregnancy, whether it's miscarriage or full term, you're really hormonal. So I went home, was very hormonal, lying on the couch, crying. Why is this happening to me? What happened? What did I miss? And this was in the middle of the day. And it was, daylight, 3:30 in the afternoon. I'm lying on the couch, and this other being shows up at the edge of my couch, and she was very like feminine in appearance, long wispy white hair, big blue eyes, like crystal blue eyes, but almond shaped, and this very like gaunt face, pointy chin, very sort of like she had this presence, and she was like beaming this love and light to me. And she just said thank you. She came to thank me, like she said it's okay, one day you'll understand this, but we give you gratitude, you're helping, or something to that effect, and then disappeared. So I was, this was all part of my wake up call, the series of things that happened to me in 1995. And 6 months before that, and there's a connection here. I'll just go back because they say that when you come into close proximity with alien technology, like things can happen to your body. And so in April of 95, which was exactly 6 months before this miscarriage, I was on the beach, Indian Rocks Beach, which is where I lived. And I used to go there every night to watch the sunset and with my neighbors, and everybody would just hang out. And it was like kind of balmy, Florida life. And um, there was not a cloud in the sky. It was like very clear. The sun had gone down. It was like that twilight um, indigo color. And I started to, and the sea was very calm. Okay, so there was no weather issues or anything. So I started to hear all this rumbling under the water. And at first I thought it was a pod of dolphins, which, is not unusual for them to come close to shore, especially when the sun goes down, the fish come over there and then they feed. That happens often. But then it got bigger. And I thought, whoa, 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 that can't be dolphins. Maybe it was, how could it be a whale? Whales don't come this close. And then I started to see metallics rise out of the water. And then I thought, oh my God, a submarine? What is a submarine doing there? And this is my, 1995 brain. And and then all of a sudden this silver disc craft just literally emerged out of the at the time Gulf of Mexico. Now it's Gulf of America, just, and it hovered, and I watched all the foam, all the sea foam kind of shake off of it and fall down. And I was just sitting there literally like agog, like my jaw dropped. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And it was like the size of a football field. And maybe a minute, and then it just shot up into the sky, and I watched it become like a star. Like that's how fast it disappeared and just, minimized. And then I saw like it was like some portal thing open up and it just disappeared. And I was just absolutely, that was like life changing. I found out um, the day after, because I had a friend at the time who was involved in the local MUFON. I wasn't, but then I became a MUFON member after that. Um, that the local MUFON, which at the time was in Lakewood, had received 350 calls that on that incident from people at different locations all around the shoreline, all around the beach, who had seen that craft and reported it. So I knew that I was not alone. It was very scary at first. I had no idea. I was doing astrology back then. I had no idea what was going on. So that woke me up. And then 6 months later, I had this miscarriage, which woke me up, but woke me up to the fact that I had been in this all along. Like it wasn't the first rodeo. It was just the one that became conscious. Because like I lived in South Africa for 2 years, and like I went, and I wasn't even in a relationship. It was impossible. And I went like months without a period. And like sometimes they would say, oh, it's because of the opposite of the world, the southern hemisphere, and it like messed up my cycle. But I was being used as an incubator for this alien human. That was the purpose of abductions. So in my presentation today, I have all this proof now because that wake up call in 1995 caused me to literally go down rabbit holes and
Yeah.
find out about what you already just said about this secret space program, and also about, there's so many levels to this, but
Yeah.
part of what the aliens were doing, like, is, and I found out that this is all, I'll show you this in slides, so seeing is believing, is that there are certain implants, and I know you understand this because you have it in your books, that identify what a person is going to be used for. And so, so when I was 2 years old, that was my first, um, like, conscious memory of something happening, something paranormal, abnormal, something supernatural happening to me in my crib. So this was, like, my parents, my biological parents, would come in and find me upside down in the crib with nosebleeds. And they would always talk about it. So that's why it became a memory, because they would like complain about it. Oh, we had to go in and we had to, change the sheets because you always had these nosebleeds. And then I ended up with this little implant that ended up on my right nostril. And it felt like a little BB, okay, like something was there. And I had terrible allergies going through my childhood all the way up until I was like 29, 30, when I finally took control over it and realized, I had to change my chemistry. I overcame it all, and also how I kind of ended up with Christ, who liberated me from those, from
Yes.
access. So they
Yes.
no longer have access to me. Okay, so I cut cords, I broke contracts, kind of like getting a divorce. I broke the agreements. I took responsibility that somewhere along the timeline, pre-birth state maybe, I agreed to this on some level. So when you take responsibility for it, then it takes away the victim consciousness that goes with it. So I broke the contracts, I broke the agreements. They no longer have access, and I invited Christ in to heal all of these parts.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have a human baby, full term. And I had multiple miscarriages. So this was an ongoing wish and desire. And through all the healing and through all the, deliverance and sessions and this and that, I did. So God gave me a little girl, um, who was born full term. Everything was normal. Uh, March 26th of 2000. So she's 26 years old now. And so I was blessed with a one human baby, but the whole thing sort of inspired me to write all these books and to help people to break what is part of, an ancient generational curse that was put on women.
Yes.
So there's the curses of Eve. And I know I sent you my recent book that has how to break these curses, the curses of Eve, which
You
everybody
know
knows
what?
about.
I just want to say one thing to you, Ella, though, is I just want
Sure.
to say like how proud of you I am that you were able to break these things and remove these implants because I mean that is a serious self-actualization that might be very difficult for women to get through, especially when they're trying to unpack all the trauma from what they've experienced through forced breeder programs and the sexual misery grid because I mean it's when you have a lot of trauma from this, that's really what creates more of the difficulty to release the veils and all of the dissolution. And even to wake up to the idea that you were even a part of something like that in the first place is just like because a lot of your memories are erased. And when you've gone through that much trauma, they're slowly returned to you over time. And so that's, you're putting the pieces together. So yeah, and I think it's
That's
amazing that you've used this to kind of push you forward, like as your fuel to actually like write your books, because I have to tell you the same thing for me, that this has always been at the core of like, I guess you could say, what was my pain body, and I had to learn how to channel that as well into something that wasn't destructive or or just to channel it for good, for light, and for healing. So, but one thing you said about your story that I just wanted to ask you about and kind of just bring some attention to that. I think it's very interesting that you've seen the white grays and then called the hospital. They ask you to put your fetus in a bag, which is like, oh my gosh, a Ziploc bag. You know
well,
what I mean?
it
Like,
wasn't the fetus. The fetus was
okay.
already gone. That's what the two little grays with the button eyes were there at the end of the bed. That's what they came to get. So they took the fetus and then the rest, the placenta and everything I
Oh
passed
my gosh, they took the.
in the toilet. And that's when the emergency room, when I was talking to them on the phone, and they said, get a Ziploc bag and scoop it up and bring it in. And I did, and they analyzed it, and that's when they said, oh, you're so lucky because we don't need to do a DNC because the whole thing was intact and you passed it all. The only thing missing was the fetus. So that's when I woke up, like they were there for the fetus.
That is wow, that they took the fetus. Oh
They
my
took the
gosh.
fetus.
Okay.
Yes. So
Yeah.
there's a part two to this, and that was months later. Okay, like weeks or months later, I would still have these. What I joined a group. Okay, so that I wasn't alone in this. The ISCNI, which was going on, was probably one of the first internet groups. Institute for the Study of Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. Whitley Strieber was in that group. I got to talk to a lot of different experiencers and abductees and all of that. And I learned that this was like a common thing that would happen to women, and it was called they called it the wise baby dream. So I would have this repetitive dream where I was in this like nursery type thing, and they would hand me this fetus, okay, like swaddled up, and it had my husband's head on it. Like he was like a big adult head, and the body was like this little fetus. And that was like, the distortion. It was distorted, but I thought, well, that's just how dreams are. But actually, this was a common occurrence to other women. They all had the same dream. so so they would hand me this, and my job was to cuddle it,
Mm.
and give it human contact, because the alien human hybridization, the part that's human, and they know this, that in order to grow these hybrids, they needed human contact. We don't grow without touch. So they would hand me the fetuses to coddle, and then I would, do my thing and then put them back in the bassinet and then wake up. So this was going on for a while. So that's like a
I have
piece.
to tell you, I've had a lot of dream experiences like that as well, that I'm holding hybrid children that are mine in the dream space that are coming to me to work with me or to connect with me. So yeah, that is a very wild thing to put words to, that this
It's
is happening. Yeah.
and it seems to be a common thing to the point where it was put into a script and they illustrated it in Resident Alien. So the last, if anyone, you can stream it now. They stopped making them, but they're there. There's 4 seasons. So in the last season, from the end of season 3 to the beginning of season 4, they brought this whole thing out and they illustrated it. So one of the characters actually had a baby abducted, and so it was all about the baby, and the Greys were trying to hold on to the baby, and they were trying to get the baby back. And this is all part of like a TV script, but the truth is stranger than fiction, because her dreams was exactly this dream that I was telling you, how she was put into this nursery, and they illustrated it so well, for TV. and she was there, coddling and rocking her hybrid baby. So this is a phenomenon.
Yes. And I mean, I've been saying that all along. This is what's behind the Stargate Wars. And it's so hard for people to wrap their minds around this. I feel like sometimes, even when I'm just saying this, it's like, but you think about these abductions. What are they abducting you for? You know,
Well, that's the $1 million
let
question.
that just
So,
soak in for a minute.
yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
I mean,
tell
looking.
us about your slide then. Where does this take us?
Okay, so I'll go through the slides because a lot of your questions are answered in here. And also, it's good to see visuals, because people learn through visuals as well as just talking. So this is, like I'm basically saying that we can't put all our eggs in one basket. No pun intended. We're talking about eggs now, but it's an old saying because everyone is expecting UFO disclosure to come from the US government. Okay. And yes, they're going to give something is coming down the pike. President Trump promised it. Okay. And it's being blocked, but it's coming anyway. We just need to be patient. But it's not the whole enchilada. It's going to be pieces. So we're going to get carrots and a little piece of this, some validation, things that have already really been released that people just haven't seen. It's like in the files. So I'm going to connect these dots for you. So this book here, The Cosmic Slingshot, has this piece about how this is connected to the reincarnation trap. Okay, so that's a very important piece to keep in mind, that that's how they continue to harvest our our energies, or anyone who dies, whether they die young or they die, at any other age, that keeps everything going, because they're, what are they after? Not just our physical DNA, but our soul energy. Okay. And they can create avatars, they can create human beings, they can create clones, they can create a being that looks just like you, but they can't create a soul. So they have to find ways to put soul pieces into their avatars, into their hybrids, to put them out on the earth. So that's why in my books I have like the categorization and identification split, and I'll show you I have a chart here that basically separates beings from soul matrix to soulless. Okay, so if we think in those terms, because you don't have a soul, you are a soul. You
Right. And
are a
it
soul. You
came to me
have
the
a
other
body.
it came to me the other day too, just to add to this a little bit, is that one of the reasons why we have soulless beings and we have these empty seeders is because their bloodline, their genetics are so degenerated because they've been the product of force breeding so many times. And if this has gotten into the hands of some of the really, the groups we don't want to be think that they're force breeding us with, like grays and things like this. Okay, because how could it be? How could it really be that a human is walking around without a soul? So this had to come through master genetic manipulation and obviously force atrocities through breeding. I mean, there's really no other explanation for how this can manifest in the way it has.
You're absolutely right, and it's more than one group that's been doing this, because the science is used and misused. So I'm going to show you how eugenics has been going on since the Anunnaki came to planet Earth, because their whole thing, you see, the narrative out there, and I mean, let me just preface by saying I believe the opposite of this, that the evolutionary, the Darwinian theory that humans evolved from apes. I think that was a lie to cover up what actually did happen, that it's really the other way around, that I proved this through scripture, through history, in my book series, that human beings were created uh, with everything. That we were created in the image and likeness of the gods, plural. And that meant that we had all 12 strands of DNA, and the Eden, the whole scenario in Eden, the story is like Adam and Eve walked and talked with God. They had it all. They had clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience. They had everything switched on that today we would call superhuman or metahuman. Okay. So when the Anunnaki came, they needed a slave force. They needed servants. They needed to replace their Igigi or Igigi, however it's pronounced, because they rebelled against them. There was a mutiny, and that's what's in the records. So they needed to replace their Igigi, who were their servants. So they came to Earth and used humans. So the story is that they took the primitive human, but we at one point, like during the times of Atlantis and Lemuria, the humans that populated the Earth were had all their DNA going. They knew how to create, and there was a misuse. Atlantis fell before it actually physically fell. It fell from within because the new generation stopped respecting and honoring the laws of creation, and so it fell from within, and then it manifested out. But those humans had everything. And this was before the Anunnaki. So this is like pre-Anunnaki history. So the Anunnaki came and took those humans, and it was part of a curse, which gave them spiritual legal ground. So that's what, like I have in my book, that curses and blessings come down the bloodlines, and they're like birthrights. And there's spiritual legal ground to these things. So you can break your curses. You have, when you go to Christ, he came to break the curse. That's what it says, you Galatians 3:13, that he who became the curse broke the curse for all of us. So through him we can be free. So and that's all part of this cosmic spiritual warfare that involves these alien parasitic entities that can identify as adversaries manipulating humanity through genetic tampering, soul bondage, and division. Because, a house divided against itself can't stand. So they are threatened by how powerful we can become when we connect with each other. So when we form groups, and we get connected and we have unity, that means that they become powerless. So they do everything they can to keep us divided, because if we're all divided, they can pull our strings like marionettes and manipulate us.
So I have a question for you because I know you've studied biblical scripture like very deeply here. So it's good to have your perspective on this. What would be your take on the book of Enoch in terms of forced breeder programs? And I just want to give you like an example that I have. I've been looking at the book of Enoch in the Ethiopian Orthodox, and it does seem like a lot of the book of Genesis like comes from the book of Enoch. And I noticed that, everything in terms of the watchers that descended in this forced breeder program of the Nephilim coming down and mating with the women of earth, that, he talks about the specific angels like Azazel, that he was the one that came down and said, let's do this. But come to find out, Enoch himself lived like 365 days, and he was apparently half human, half Anunnaki. And so it's like, did this begin with Enoch? Because I've always seen Enoch, some sort of interface with the whole fallen Metatronic energy, and that these spirits are connected through these God lineages, essentially.
Okay, so that's partly true. But what got a little like lost in translation there is that so God saved Enoch. Okay, Hanoch was his name in Hebrew, and he never died. Okay, so there's no record of his death. And when you mention Metatron, according to Judaism and Judaic history of all of this, Metatron was Enoch. Enoch was Metatron. So they are one and the same. And that's the reason, one of the reasons why the Lord never let him die. And he was one of the ones that I call frequent flyers because he came and went and came back and was back and forth. And according to my research, the books of Enoch originally were 66 because he took Enoch up and he turned him into a scribe. He taught him the cosmic fire language, which is the original Hebrew. And the 22 letters, this is in my first book, the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet are actually pictographs. Yes.
This book?
Yes, that's the first book. Very good. Thank you.
Yes,
Um,
yes. I have it, by the way, and everyone should get her books, by the way. I'll leave links down in the description, but she's amazing.
Thank you. So
Mhm.
so the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet are actually represent the 22 major constellations. So Enoch was basically schooled, when he went up into the ship, they showed him all this, and then he brought down all this knowledge in 66 books. That was the original. Now we only have three. We only have three books that allegedly comes from Enoch. Okay, the Ethiopian, the one that you talked about, but the Ethiopians are special in the fact that they didn't submit to Rome. And thank God for that. Okay, because when Rome went on this whole editing trip that took, over a decade, they rejected all these books. They rejected the books of Enoch. They rejected all these Jewish texts. And the Jews were kind of put in charge of keeping records, of keeping history, okay, so that people would not forget. So the purpose of understanding and learning history is that we can learn from its mistakes and hopefully not make the same mistake again. But when the enemy comes in and they decide we're going to wipe out history so that you forget about it, so that you're going to like start all over again, so you're not going to be influenced by what happened in the past. And that is exactly what happened multiple times on our timeline. The Library of Alexandria, and that was done in two events, not one. And then, of course, the Church of Rome that basically created replacement theology. So they cherry picked the Bible. That's why you have, and you were correct in connecting the dots between Genesis and Enoch, because Genesis 6 basically is a synopsis, tells the story that the books of Enoch go into much more detail on, about when the fallen angels took wives. And this is a very important piece because why did they take wives? Okay, why didn't they just take the women and rape them? And this is the second part of the curse on women. So this is a piece that I found out, that it's not just the curses of Eve, okay? It's the curses of Archangel Michael, okay? Because Archangel Michael, according to the book of Enoch, he was the angel that was dispatched from the Lord to stop what they were doing on the earth. Okay, and the women that were taken by the fallen angels as wives, the reason that they took them as wives was to create a birthright on earth, because it's only through the spiritual legal ground of marriage, the covenant of marriage, that they can legally give birth on the earth. Okay, that's why they didn't rape them. That's why they married them. So it was done, it was like a legal contract. Okay, and that's a very important piece of this. So
Do
that
you
they,
feel that that was a female slavery contract in any sense or any binding form?
yes, yes, it was. And they also, and look at okay, replacement theology started with the Church of Rome, who wanted to replace Israel and the Jews and Judaism, but they took and they basically stripped the Jewishness from Yeshua, okay, and who we call Jesus, and they created a different religion, okay, that they forced it during the Crusades, which were very important turning point, which is kind of like repeating now, is that they forced Jews to convert or die to Christianity. okay, not realizing, and I'm not Jewish, not realizing that accepting Yeshua as a Jew makes you a completed Jew because he was Jewish. He was a rabbi. He didn't teach anything other than the fulfillment of Torah prophecies.
Mhm.
Okay, he said, I didn't come to change the law, I came to fulfill it. Okay, and one of and this is the point that I've been like writing about for all the books have this in it, is the enemy, he says, is going to have his face on it. The Antichrist and the enemy will will come in his face and will try to pretend to be him. They're counterfeiting him, okay, stealing his whole imagery and his energy and pretending to be him, but they're not. And that is what we call the religious spirit, which is not of God. So that's what the Church of Rome actually created, replacement theology, which were actual legal documents of anti-Semitism. Okay, but they didn't just stop there. Okay, so this is like big news for people to like wake up to now. What's happening on the earth right now is that they went, their whole motivation was to get Jerusalem. Okay, and because Jerusalem, as you know, is this ancient space portal, because where Jesus not only died and rose again, but he ascended. And the ascension is kind of an important piece of the story because the disciples were like looking up, watching him go up into a cloud, right? And then the angels appeared next to the disciples, it says, and they look at and they say to the disciples, what are you looking at? You know, the very place, the very spot where he ascended is exactly where he will return, okay, at the end of this age. So that means that it was a space portal, okay, because there's like one door in and one door out to go where he was going and
What
to
is the
return.
exact location that that occurred at?
The Mount of Olives in Jerusalem.
Okay.
So, but there's several portals in Jerusalem, but Jerusalem in itself is a space portal, which is, you know, Zachariah Sitchin kind of established that in the ancient world, every time they would build these spaceports, okay, and they would come and go because of the portals. They built a spaceport, and this is all over the Middle East. It's in Iraq, in Iran, and in Jerusalem. That that what they did when the gods left, they called gods, the ETs, when they left, they turned it into a temple. Okay. So these ancient temples were built literally right on these spaceports. And that was all translated and evidenced in Sitchin's material. So
Yes.
so
Yeah.
here you have
His material is actually, I think it's very significant, and it's so frustrating because it does, get people, people say all kinds of things, but you just have to read the material for yourself and make up your own mind. That's what a sovereign conscious being does. They, you know,
that's right.
yeah. But yes, that's some of the information I've been getting too with this war over the Strait of Hormuz and all of the blockages there. I've been seeing the black cubes and the red cubes, and there's war over the Guardian Dolphin Islands that are there. And I've been seeing that the Anunnaki use these portals still, that they're not just like dormant things, that
Right.
when we're seeing, these flare-ups of the holy wars and everything that's raging and these big moves being made economically, socially, all these things. I mean, it's because underlying too, there's um, evacuation where these beings want to get off planet. That I've also been seeing there's something with wormwood or Nibiru spaceships or
Oh, big
coming back
time.
and
Yes.
entering the orbital field that I mean this isn't something that people think this is just so long ago that this isn't, but this is all like
History repeats itself. And I just posted, if people go to my Facebook page, the pictures of these huge, ginormous spaceships that are showing up around the sun, okay, and around Earth's upper atmosphere. Photos, pictures, telescopic from space telescopes, okay, and this has been going on for the past 2 decades, really, that they've been coming in. I call it the parade, of the tail of the debris of Nibiru, because the tail comes in first, the red iron oxide, all the objects, and that includes asteroids, comets, fireballs, meteorites, and yes, spaceships. And we're seeing all of that. In
Mhm.
fact, this month there's two twin comets, and we just had this solar flare, this X 2.5 solar flare, and you can actually see it. It was photographed by, and it's go to my Facebook page if people want to see pictures of it, and it's this big plasma belch that the sun just belched out, and the plasma went straight to the comet. So you actually see this connection between the plasma flare and the comet. It's like it's almost like wanted to eat it up or something. So there's so much activity going on. And yes, spaceships are part of it. And in 2027, they're saying that we're going to see this armada of ships come through. And some people say that it's already happened, but I think when it happens, we'll know about it. But just getting back to the replacement theology is that the Church of Rome didn't just stop with replacement theology of the religion of Rome, which is based on Babylonian religion, by the way. So the book of Revelation prophesies about the end of the age and talks about mystery Babylon, and that is the Vatican. Okay, it is not the United States of America as many Christians think. It is the Vatican, because they are still practicing the ancient Babylonian religion. All Constantine did was switch out the gods. He switched out Mithras for Jesus, Semiramis for Mother Mary. They got rid of all the gods and goddesses and brought in saints and angels instead. Everything else stayed the same. The Eucharist, the costume, they still wear the same mitar hat, which represents the Dagon fish, the red shoes, the whole, the pearls, the purple, the velvet. It's all ancient. It is not Christianity. It's Babylon. Okay, so in order to understand what's happening now, so then they wanted to get Jerusalem. So in 700, the Pope authorized and sent these monks, okay, because the monks were literate, to go and train Muhammad to take Jerusalem, because Muhammad was of a warrior caste family, and he was illiterate. So they trained him to take Jerusalem, but he betrayed them. He took it for himself. And so then Islam was created. So I assert through my book series, through history, through scripture, that the Church of Rome was responsible for the creation of Islam. Okay, and that was 750 AD, which is another form of replacement theology, because if you read the Quran, it's the Old and the New Testament, except with a twist, okay, with their own twist on it. So when you were mentioning about the curse of the women from the fallen angels, that is manifested on steroids in Sharia law, okay, because they are so afraid of women. They're afraid, and they think it's like, oh, they're lust, but it's the curse on women that has created that, to get to that like obscene level that a woman can't even, show her face or her eyes or her skin or anything. So that is just another form of replacement theology, which brings us to the end of the age, the battle of the end of the age, which is very similar to what went on during the Crusades. You either have to convert or die. And the Crusades, most people think or learned that they were between the Christians and the Muslims. But the Jews were the victims of the Crusades, because they were both, the Christians were forcing the Jews to convert or die, and the Muslims were also doing that, and they're now doing it to Christians. So call it karma. I don't know, things come full circle. But we are coming up on this big disclosure that's going to come down through the government officials. And what seems to be blocking them from releasing certain files or certain information is the evangelical fundamental, what they call Collins elite in the Pentagon. And so this is kind of a repeat of history in some way, but also very dangerous narrative to embrace. And that seemed to have come out pretty quickly about the fact that the aliens are demons, to the point that it's now like going to create another type of form of racism and xenophobia on Earth, okay? Because there are good aliens. So I have this whole thing on my blog that all demons are in fact aliens. It's a half truth that there are demons. We know the demonic aspect of this, but they're not all demonic. So all demons are aliens, but not all aliens are demons. So it's important to discern because of what went on in the past, how they, accused women who actually had contact with, otherworldly beings, angels, Mother Mary, Jesus himself, and accused women of doing witchcraft, which was part of that curse that's in the book of Enoch, that Archangel Michael cursed the wives of the fallen angels because it was the wives who joined them, and they were human, but they joined them to practice witchcraft against everybody else. So that was like, and witchcraft is rebellion. So Second Samuel says that the sin of rebellion is equal to the sin of witchcraft. The sin of witchcraft is equal to the sin of rebellion. So they were rebelling against the Lord, the King of the universe, the throne. Okay, which all kind of comes together.
That's interesting that you're fine. I'm sorry, I just wanted to say this while this is still there,
Sure.
but you know how you're saying the sin or rebellion, or say that again. Rebellion is
Well, it's scripture. It's Second Samuel. The sin of rebellion is equal to the sin of witchcraft,
okay.
and vice versa.
Because I also heard that the sin of unforgiveness is equal to murder as well.
Well, the sin of unforgiveness will never get you free. So it's like it's almost like blaspheming the Holy Spirit, which is the unforgivable sin, is not accepting God's grace to of his forgiveness and not being forgiving yourself. So when you get that gift and God has forgiven you, you can through his grace forgive the unforgivable.
I
Because
know, but just to put that in perspective, though, to think that if you go your whole life and you can't forgive, that you would just be seen or judged the same as someone who maybe flat out and committed murder. You know, that's like,
well,
the equilibrium of all of this.
it is, and it's part of the mix of like the seven principalities of Satan that keep people in bondage. So Jesus said, "I've come to set the captives free." Free from this, the reincarnation trap, free from being used as incubators, free from all of this stuff that we're enmeshed in, but also free from these seven principalities, which is bitterness, which means that you can't forgive others, and then there's self bitterness where you can't forgive yourself, so people are bound in their own shame and guilt, and Jesus came to set people free from that. So there's deliverance is a, I have this slide I'll show you soon, is a process. It's not something that happens like overnight, because like we didn't get to where we are overnight. It was kind of a buildup. So it's kind of an unraveling and a freeing and a liberating experience piece by piece. So people can only do so much, but what we can't do on our own, we do through the presence of Christ in us. So, like, I can do all things through Christ, but I can't do it by myself. So, there are certain things that I can't forgive,
Mhm.
okay, by myself. I just don't have it in me. I'm not wired that way. But through Christ, I can let go. I can forgive. And forgive, there's two sides. It's not like, oh, let's kiss and make up and be friends or lovers again, but it's also letting go of the need to retaliate, to revenge, to hold on to the hatred, which basically causes cancer on the inside. So it's like having that person live rent free in your head. Letting them go is that type of forgiveness where you're not expected to ever speak to them again, or you can have your boundary, you can have your life back without having them in it, and you can still forgive without having a relationship. Okay, so people have to understand that there's two levels of forgiveness. It's not just like the kind, you forgive your daughter, you forgive your mother, that kind of that's already within the relationship. But when people do some horrible things that you can't get free or heal from, you have to invoke forgiveness, which is a superpower. I'm kind of getting ahead of my whole thing here, but anyway, so this is the problem right now, is that they're creating this new form of racism, and the disclosure is not a black and white issue. There's a lot of gray areas, no pun intended, but and because they're not all demons, they're not all fallen angels. That is half the story, and and to just put out a half truth, one has to be careful that they don't get hold of the wrong half, because the other half is usually a deception. Okay, that's why they're called half truths, because you don't get a good deception unless you throw truths in it, right? So that you got to like sandwich the deception between a truth. Otherwise, no one would believe it. So that's part of this narrative that seems to be coming out of the government and these officials like JD Vance. Like he doesn't know anything. He comes in, a lot of these people that are in the government right now, they come into this whole phenomenon not knowing pretty much anything. Like I've been at it since the 90s, but studying it and following it and all this stuff. And these people have absolutely no experience in it. And they're just being told certain, narratives that are coming down, trickling down the hierarchy, because the Pentagon officials are afraid to let out some of this information for some good reasons. To be reasonable and to be fair, there are some good reasons why they're but the other, it's like, okay, we don't need to know, like national security is important. Okay, so I agree with them there. We don't need to know the nuts and bolts of how things work, but we do have the right, in my opinion, to know who our neighbors are. Okay, who are we living with here on Earth? So I have had this whole thing going on, that what happened in the 1950s. So we had all these contactees from the 1950s that they were out there talking about how they saw these beings come out of the mountains. They saw these ships come out of the ocean. Okay, there's coming and going, there's back and forth, and this has been going on for a long time. So in 1952, the government formed the CIA actually formed the Robinson Committee, and that was to create the scientific study of UFOs. But it really wasn't about that. That was just what it was the cover. What they were really doing were debunking anyone that came forward who had experiences. And then they gave these scripts to Hollywood, okay, and told them to make these movies about aliens invading from outer space. Then you end up with this whole slew of B movies, Martians and invasions and outer space aliens and all this stuff that went on for a few decades. Then the narrative shifted, because they're using Hollywood they actually give these scripts to these filmmakers. So we know that there are people that live inside this planet and have been for the longest time. Okay, and they're not necessarily demons. They're not like fallen angels. They're ancient humans that survived the floods of two floods, the floods of Atlantis and Lemuria, and then Noah's flood, which came later. And they went inside the earth. Okay, and the earth is, Edmund Halley came out in 1820 about the true shape of the earth was that it was like caverned out, not hollow like a hollow egg, but like it had all these caverns that were so high and so wide that they built cities inside. So, and every time there was a climate event, okay, whether it was an ice age or flooding or fires or anything, what would people do? They would go underground. But what do animals do? It's like we live here in Colorado, the wildlife, what do they do during the winter time? They dig holes. They go underground. They stay warm. They survive whatever's happening on the surface, the high winds, the freezing cold, all that. So people have been doing that too. So this is a piece of disclosure that they're not willing to focus on. They just want to focus on, oh, they're demons and fallen angels, and that is a piece of it. That is a half truth, and that is part of it, so that they can justify taking out their Star Wars technology and get ready to fight them. But here's the thing, and thank you for letting me say this, okay? Because here is the mass deception at work. All right. So a lot of Christians think that the mass deception is going to come from New Agers creating saviors out of aliens. And that's already happened. Okay. Look at all
Yeah.
the cults, right? That's like old news. The real mass deception that is written in the Bible prophecies is that the Antichrist army and this counterfeit Messiah and these counterfeit aliens will come and try to get humans to side with them, to join their army and to join forces with them and ally with them to fight and the final battle with the God of heaven and his angels that are all coming to earth. So they're going to create some narrative that we're going to have this alien invasion. Okay, I'm sure you've heard this. And Werner von Braun, who was the NASA German Nazi that they took from the war, brought here, created NASA, and he said that back in 1947 or 1948. That's what they thought then. Okay, we're in a different era now. So
Do
why?
you think that they could be possibly setting the stage for all of that right now with all of these missing scientists and then the death of David Wilcox? And it's like, it really does feel like they are really targeting this community and people who are kind of at the head of it. And you said they could be staging this,
Yes, but it's
galactic war.
yes, and they're trying to put this narrative out to justify a real Star Wars event where they take out all their space tech that they've been heavily protecting and guarding for the past 75, almost 80 years. They started this in World War II. So they know about the inner Earth aliens. That's what the CIA wanted to cover up. They didn't want people looking in. They thought, well, we have to create a distraction. So we're going to have people look up. Look up. The aliens are coming from outer space. Let's call them visitors instead of neighbors
Mhm.
because they live and they coexist with us here on the earth. They're caverned in. Otherwise, why are there so many experiencers and witnesses, myself included, seeing craft coming from inside the earth, coming out of the oceans? And that's what the Congress is showcasing recently because they're allowing these pilots to become whistleblowers and talk about how these craft go at these unbelievable speeds that they don't even understand how it works, coming and going in and out of the oceans. But the early contactees, and some of them today, are seeing them come out of mountains. Okay, so it's not just the water, it's the portals in the mountains. Okay, otherwise, why is Mount Shasta such a Grand Central Station type? There's so much activity going on there, and other mountains too. It's not the only one. So I think that they're protecting and covering up what's happening underground. So they want to make you think that it's coming from outside. And that doesn't mean that there isn't stuff coming from outside, because Nibiru, the Nemesis Nibiru system, is intersecting in our solar system. It already has started. So that's what I was saying. It's like a parade of objects, and spaceships are part of those objects, and probes.
Oh, interesting you say that. I would love to decode that astrology with you if you have a chance with it comes to Nibiru. But I've seen a parade of I was just out camping at Blackwater River National Forest, and I seen a parade of what looked like UFOs or starships that were going right across the sky. I
Oh,
mean, it was insane.
oh,
Uh,
wow.
and I was like, oh my gosh, what is that? My daughter had to look up. We were both looking like, are you seeing this? Are you seeing this? Like we're triple checking. And so I mean, yeah, I think there's already a lot of activity, but yeah, I agree with you completely. They are what I'm seeing is that there's just such a psychic gap for this level of knowledge to come forward that we have to get to a level that people can understand the ultra terrestrial nature of the visitors, right?
Yes.
And we don't have any of these type of people with this level of knowledge that aren't yes men or men in black or gatekeepers that are, blocking within the administration to the ears of Donald Trump or like JD Vance that you had on the screen just a minute ago, that they're like not able to actually get in contact with, you know, the real version of it all. Um,
Well, I have to give credit where credit is due. The Congress people at the moment are doing the best they can with what they have to get this to the public. Okay, they've seen stuff. They're saying things within their authority, and but half of them like got thrown into this, and they never had any sort of like education about it for that's been going on for years. So it's much easier to tell them something and then they just run with it without necessarily checking it, back. Oh, does this make sense as to what, you got to put the whole, it's a tapestry, right? It's a big picture. And, if they're going to just give you one narrative, which seems to be what has been happening, because, and this is, so I know I'm bouncing all over the place, but I say, why are we listening to dead Nazis? Okay, like that. Just because he said that then doesn't mean that that is what everybody follows now. That could have been the thought. That probably was the thought form after World War II. Okay, where the Germans had started the secret space program in Antarctica. They were reverse engineering alien craft. So yes, it was on their radar and their mastermind, their evil mastermind to take over the world, to create a Fourth Reich, that they could easily create a fake alien invasion with their, reverse engineered craft, which they did. They because the craft that showed up over the White House, over the Capitol in Washington, D.C. in 1952, that was them. That
mhm.
was the reverse engineered craft that the Nazis created. And they did that to send a message to the White House. And if you read it, it actually created like this other bill that they were trying to influence. But if you looked at it really carefully, there were swastikas on that craft. So there's nothing new under the sun. I think that we've moved on from that. I think that if they were to try to play that alien invasion card, the real aliens, the true people that are protecting Earth from us destroying it, the ones who show up on these nuclear bases to put the kibosh on the nuclear stuff, which has happened more than once all over the place. Those groups, they're trying to preserve the planet because they share it with us. So
Yeah.
they would show up. It
I,
would
I see I see them as the Guardian Alliance.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Or the Galactic Federation on Earth that Chaim Eshed mentioned. So when Hebrew is a very specific language, and you have those words, Galactic Federation, used multiple ways by channelers. Galactic Federation of Worlds, Galactic Federation of Light, but he's the only one that actually used the word, the whole sentence, Galactic Federation of Earth, meaning that the beings that he was that he was told, oh, humanity isn't ready yet, they are actually beings that come from inside the Earth. They're not visitors from outer space or some other planet. They live here with us.
Hmm.
Okay. And that's the big cover up since the 1950s. And for some reason, they don't want us to know who they are, but they're human. Okay. They're different types of humans. They have different DNA than we do. They also have different skin. So the Nordics and the whites are I'll get to that in a minute. The Nordics and the whites are why they're so white is because they live in the earth. They're not exposed to the sun. They have different pigmentation. They almost look albino. Okay. So, there's different groups of them, and they're not all demonic. So we have to, we're going to have a conversation. We have to, instead of using the word all aliens are demons, or, like some aliens are demons, and these are the ones that are. Let's list them. Let's identify them. Let's discern them and put them there and know who the enemy is. And then we can embrace the guardians, the ones who are trying to help us, the ones who are preserving this planet from our messing it up. Okay, they're the ones trying to stop us from using nuclear weapons. So I don't think that those are the
Yeah.
demons.
Well,
But
when you say that stop us from nuclear weapons and you're talking about the building of craft, it's like what I'm seeing now is that this war is active and going right now, that it almost feels like the galactic war is what we're seeing play out in Iran. I mean, the craft that they're using, I mean, think about it. The whole war was through the Air Force and the Navy. They're using mostly aircraft. They use the B-52 bombers, which we know were built off planet. I mean, it's pretty obvious that there's a galactic war that's happening right in front of us.
it is, I agree. And spiritual too. You know that the word Hormuz was named after Ahura Mazda, who is the god of the Zoroastrians. So the Iranians want to go back to Zoroastrian, and Zoroastrian was this monotheism, very similar to Judaism. In fact, there's lots of parallels because the Jews and the Persians have this ancient history together. King Cyrus and helping the Jews rebuild the temple, and it goes way back. So there is this is a spiritual cosmic battle as well as what's happening militarily. But this is the big bombshell that Matt Gaetz dropped recently, where he said there's an alien hybrid breeding program and that they were literally pulling people out of war zones and using them. That's the forced breeder program that you had mentioned. But I have this take on the Epstein files and the UFO files. So I'd like to connect the dot there for you and your audience because on everybody's so cynical these days. Oh, after the Epstein dump, there were two dumps, and the last one was February 14th, and that's the one that I'm featuring here, and where this was one of the survivors, Juliet Bryant, and you can read about this. There's multiple reports about it that she witnessed Epstein shapeshift into a lizard. Okay, so we've been talking about this for a long time, and they made a TV show about this called V in the 1980s, and then they redid it on ABC in 2010 and 2011, which was awesome. So if you've never seen it, download it, binge watch it. And they got so close to the truth about how the US government was dealing with this group of aliens, the reptilians, who can shapeshift into humans, okay, that can be walking amongst you, sitting next to you on a bus, on a train, on a plane, being, sitting in a waiting room and being at a bank. And I saw with a woman, okay, a banker, I was sitting across from her, and she was the banker, and I saw her eyes shapeshift into lizard eyes. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Okay. So they are out there. They are living amongst us. Okay. And this explains why he did all the terrible things that he did. So it's like, how could anybody do these things? People think, well, that's because it's not human. It's
Right.
not human to eat children. It's not human to shed the blood of the innocent. It's actually forbidden in the Bible. But what he was doing
But it's
was
exactly what reptilians do. I mean,
exactly
that's their food source. That's their desire. That's where I mean, it's all their tactic.
exactly. So, and his niece came out after this came out in and I have that slide that so let me just finish this here. So his niece came out and basically uh, outed him in the family that he was worshiping Moloch. Okay, he was of the cult of Moloch, and this is in the Old Testament. That's what the Israelites got punished for. Was thou shalt not give your child to Moloch or sacrifice your child in the fire to Moloch. And that's what he was doing. He actually, and she said that was his religion. So this is why what was inspiring him to do these awful things. So what I'm doing is connecting the dot by the internet people saying, okay, Trump's going to drop the UFO files or the alien files just to distract us from the Epstein files. No, it's a continuation because the end of the Epstein files basically was a reveal about the aliens, the lizard ones at least, okay, because that's who he was representing. And no coincidence that in 1989, Bob Lazar, who's now recently been vindicated and validated, okay, because of all the other whistleblowers that came forth and reiterated what he was trying to say in 1989, but he told George Knapp that he saw this big document about how aliens and religion, and he said that the aliens see humans as containers of souls. Okay, so that's like a thesaurus word, container or vessel, because the Bible says we're vessels. Okay, and like C.S. Lewis said, you're either owned by God or countered by Satan. There is no neutral ground. So even people who don't believe anything, like they're atheists, like Satan has the spirit of doubt, the spirit of unbelief. That's what they're being bound by, because atheism can be cured like that. All they have to do, and many people have, is that Jesus shows up, they get a vision of Christ in a dream or in a vision, and they're no longer atheists anymore. Or a near death experience, like what happened to Howard Storm, who was like big time atheist, goes dies on an operating table in France waiting for life-saving surgery, and ends up going down into this uh, black hole, being eaten by these lizard beings he described that were chewing on him. And some voice out of the hole called down and said, pray. And he's like, I don't know how to pray because he doesn't believe in God. So he's got descending deeper and deeper and deeper. And then he remembered this 5-year-old memory of his when he was taught in kindergarten. Jesus loves me, this I know, because the Bible tells me so. So he spoke it out loud. And immediately this hand went down into the hole, pulled him up, and brought him to Jesus, put him right in front of the throne of God in heaven. And he's like, oh, this is like, he didn't want to leave. He was so in love with the Lord and everything about it. But the Lord said to him, no, I'm sending you back. He said, the next time you'll be able to stay. But I want to send you back because I want you to learn how to live right for me. And he said, the angels will be with you. And sure enough, it took he sent him back into the body. By that time, the surgeons had arrived, and he's already flatlined, and they're resuscitating him, with the paddles and everything. And they got the lifeline. They did the surgery. It took him a year to recover, and in that year, he was visited by angels to remind him. And he's still alive, by the way. And he became a pastor, and he's in Ohio. But this is why God sends people back. The same reason why God sends people back on near death experiences is the same reason why God sends people back through reincarnation. Okay, so I made that point in the cosmic slingshot. So the reptilians, though, have been using the reincarnation trap to harvest human energies, to harvest memories. Because remember, I said earlier, they can create avatars, they can create human bodies, but they can't create the soul. So what do? They steal pieces of it from us. So they'll steal memories, because what is our soul if not for our memories and our experiences and how we interpreted them. So they steal pieces of our soul and they put it together, and they can literally insert it into these avatar bodies or hybrids. So I'm gonna just, these are all about the portals that are happening.
I
That
just wanted to mention the atheism, just because you
Oh
talked about
yeah, yeah,
atheism.
please.
What I got, and tell me if you've made any connection points with this, is that atheism is in response to the rebellion. And so atheism was
Yeah,
like, it's actually Luciferian Tothian, that it was created during this rule or this time that yeah, that it's just it's in responce to disapproval of the Templar systems, I guess you could say in some ways, that some people that subconsciously that it would be coming through because it's almost unnatural. Atheism is also almost unnatural.
I
It's
agree. People say, atheists will say there is no God, and I say there's no such thing as real atheism, because an atheist can be cured immediately once they have an encounter, and that happens often. There's tons and tons of stories, but it says that the evidence of the Creator is in the creation. So all an atheist really needs to do is look in the mirror, because everybody is given a soul, if you're human, and a God spark. Okay. And that God spark is evidence of God because he put it in you. Okay. Some people have more than one God spark. Okay. But everyone has a soul and everyone has a God spark.
mm,
So it's a matter of, and the Gnostics all taught this. Jesus even taught this. The kingdom of God is within you. So you have stuff in you that God put there. So the evidence of the creator is in the creation. You're a created being. And that distinguishes us from the artificial beings, the beings that are created artificially without souls. Okay, we have a soul, and they're fighting over our souls. And this is all part of this ancient battle that has been going on by these Anunnaki gods that have been in rebellion to the king of the universe. Okay, so Marduk was the lord of Babylon and the lord of Nibiru, and he was the nephew, the Enlil and Enkai. He basically rebelled against his father and his brother to take over. And that's why they named the planet Mars after him, because at one time he ruled the Earth and he ruled Mars. So some people believe that it's him, and he was also in the incarnation of Nimrod, who built the Tower of Babel. And what was that tower, if not for what we have today that is CERN? So CERN is a modern day Tower of Babel, because what the Tower of Babel was trying to do in its description was to create this portal into the heavens to go to God or the other parts that they fell out of, which is, what the whole story of Enoch and Genesis 6 talks about, the fall. But CERN is doing the very same thing, because it's this, concentric circles, similar to the Tower of Babel, lots of concentric circles, one graduated on top of another to create a tunnel, and a tunnel creates a portal. So they're reporting that they have beings that are coming and going in the CERN tunnel. So they have opened up the portals. And that's probably all part of end time stuff, why these beings are now coming in from uh, uh, under the earth. And the book of Revelation says that at a specific time, there is an angel that has a key that's actually going to release them, okay, to bring about the final punishment or the wrath of God that happens at the very end before the kingdom of heaven comes to and settles over a scorched earth and doesn't just restore the earth. That's the ascension. The kingdom of heaven lands on the earth, the city of Jerusalem, and it's described like this phantasmagorical mothership with 12 gates, and the Lord sits in the middle, and it's all like sapphire floors and pearls and crystals and beryl and jewels. And each of the 12 gates are named after the 12 blessed tribes of Israel, because there's one tribe that didn't make it. They got cursed. They're not in the final ending there. And
Is that the
the
tribe of Judah?
no, Judah is Jesus.
Okay, sorry.
Judah is the Lion of Judah is Jesus. And that's
Okay.
where the word Jew comes from. No, it's actually a tribe of Dan is not mentioned in the end, because Joseph was given the double portion. So he gave it to his sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. So the scholars believe that the lost tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim, originally they were in Israel and they made up the kingdom of Israel. Okay. And then it was separated into a north and a south, and all the 12 tribes, when they dispersed the first time in diaspora, that the tribe of Ephraim ended up in England. And then the tribe of Manasseh came to the United States of America. So all these 12 lost tribes, 10 lost tribes, because the other two are already there. Judah and Benjamin are already in Israel. Um, the 10 lost tribes come back to Israel in the end times, which is the Ezekiel 37, the reincarnation of ancient Israel, okay, which is the Valley of the Dry Bones. I mean, if there ever was a scripture, I mean, the people are asking for scriptures, a whole chapter describing how the Lord is going to put flesh on these dead bones and breathe his life and his spirit into these dead bones, and they're going to live again, and they're going to be a great army again. I mean, you can check that off as a prophecy fulfilled, because that has happened, because Israel is now back. People go, well, that's not the same Israel as it was before. Well, technically, yes, but technically, no. I mean, they're reincarnated. They're the same beings. They're just in a different time. Okay. But they're in the same location. But that's a whole nother argument. I'm not going to get into that. So, there are 7 theories where aliens come from. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be all of the above. Okay. Because this is a multi-layered, multi-dimensional situation phenomena. So the always have been here theory, that they've been living on the earth with us, which is what I believe, one of the ones that I hold true, and I think that they're covering that up. And then there's the classic one that, they come from outer space, another planet, another galaxy. And then they're interdimensionals, which is pretty much what our Congress is calling them now. They don't use the word extraterrestrial. They're using the word interdimensionals, which can cover a big, vast group of beings, different types of interdimensionals. And then, of course, the demon theory. And that's a piece of it. It's not the be all and end all. And then the time travelers that, what we're seeing are future humans. Maybe not. Maybe they're from the past. Could be a little bit of both. And then the consciousness trip, that it has to do with your experiences or your layer of consciousness, where you can actually call in orbs and call in UFOs, which is a bit of a trap. Okay. Because if you don't know who you're invoking, I don't think it's a safe thing to do. Okay. Because something can come into you that you don't want, that is not aligned with you. So that's something that people need to be very cautious about doing that. And then the simulation theory about, how we're all living in a simulation based on the archons and the Gnostic Gospels. But Suffice to say that these beings are living inside the earth. They have been for eons. They believe they are the true owners of the earth. So at the end of this age, there is a showdown. And there's nothing any of us can do to stop that. We can only prepare for it. Okay. And so this is what I'm calling, like, it's a false disclosure movement. That they're using, that these shadow governments have already made deals with the negative ETs or aliens, and because they're living in the earth, so they're not really extraterrestrials, they're interterrestrials, to slowly disclose ET life in a way that would benefit their agenda, which is the Draco Orion Empire. So that's part of this battle that's happening in the earth. But, again, what did Yeshua say? I've come to set the captives free, and whomever the Son sets free is free indeed. So we have to remember that we have him on our side. But the people who are atheists, they reject him because of religion. But what killed him were religious spirits. So that if he survived everything, and yet the thing that killed him were the religious spirits, and of course he overcame that and overcame death and was resurrected, and there were tons of witnesses to that. So that wasn't just a myth, that really did happen. And he's still alive today, which is why he's showing up for people. So, like, how many Muslims, this is a thing. I mean, look this up. There are millions of Muslims, actually Iranians, okay, who have been rebelling against the IRGC in Iran, that have become Christian. And why have they become Christian? Because they've been seeing Jesus. Jesus is showing up in dreams to them. So that, and who's leading this movement in Iran? Women. Women are leading this underground movement, and there's like millions of them that have all become Christian because they're rejecting the whole Islamism thing.
So interesting you say that, because a lot of my visions too have been that the awakening of the Mary Magdalene bloodlines is around SS10. It is around the Abadan Stargate. It is in those lands that the Sophia awakening is what is going to take new authorship in the Middle East. And that it's,
That's
it's
fascinating.
about it's about restoring and recovering, rehabilitating the Sophianic body.
Which, these Iranians are not Arabs. Iranians are Persians. In fact, they call themselves Aryans. So they're like an ancient race of people, and they want to go back to Zoroastrianism, which is like very similar to Judeo-Christian belief, monotheism. So they're seeing Christ. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. But, we have to look at people and discern. So we have that brain in our gut,
Yeah.
which you're very good at that. You can discern when someone is not real or not, when they're coming across as one thing, but they're really something else. And this has to do with this evil, like what Epstein did, like that is, they're using human vessels to do it. Okay, and through implants. So the implant, this is the clash of the two kingdoms, is that it's all being done through implants. So even TDS is an implant. Okay, because when you're implanted with something, you're kind of blinded and deaf to hearing the truth. You're only hearing what the implant is telling you to hear. And so people have gotten abducted to be put, and why they put them back. Ancient Aliens did this whole show on them. Like, oh, they're getting abducted, but they put back. So why do they put them there? It's not really a true kidnapping. It's not a true abduction. Okay, it's more like a manipulation. They take you for a few hours, do what they need to do, and put you back in your body, to put you back in society, to use you to perpetrate their agenda. Okay, so they do that through implantation. There's all these different, this is that chart I was telling you about. So I did this in the 90s because it helped me to see the two kingdoms that were clashing. And then there's always this middle group who are a combination of both groups who want to either make peace, create alliances, or are double agents. Okay,
Mhm.
and we have that on Earth too. So, and this is what I was saying. The movie V, well, actually, it was a TV series. The truth is stranger than fiction. They depicted this and how the public would react to these beings who were very good looking, very beautiful, sexy and all of that. And they definitely charmed everybody. And yet their true intention was to harvest humans, and not just for the time being, but for the future, because they showed that they were collecting them and storing them in this vast ship, that they kept them alive, but that they were like brain dead, so that because they need to use them, they need to be live in order to be food for them. So, and then they showed at the end how the government was dealing with them, and that's when ABC got nixed. That's when they shut it down because they came too close to the truth, in my opinion. But these are like symptoms of like alien abduction. So most people go through this list and they go, "Yeah, I've experienced that." And I'm recommending this book, The Love Bite, because my friend Evie Lorgen, you should have her on your show. She wrote this, and she gave me permission to use it, and because it just was so succinct, you know, just
Mhm.
to the point. And so many of us have been through this, but you know, um, I
Well,
had
and the alien love bite is a component of the forced breeder programs. I mean,
that's right.
there's many degrees of this that I think we need to create one of those lists from those different hybrid races and create one for, all of the different programs within the program, and then also the bulk of the types of hybrids that we're actually dealing with on Earth. Um, that's
And what happens and why they're not letting them out just yet? Because I was told that the hybrids are being kept either underground or off planet
mm,
until it's time to put them in. And that is another form of replacement. He calls replacement theology, replacement of humans. So now the big threat is AI, that AI is there to replace humans. But these hybrids are being designed to
yeah.
replace us, to
Well, and
create.
that's why I have this theory right now that I think the hybrid collectives are within like the SSP communities. And I think also the targeted individual programs and things like this, because the level of, I guess, monitoring or tracking devices that these types are dealing with, I think it's a lot more extensive. Like there's a lot more gang stalking that happens. There's a lot more being followed by black op military helicopters and things like this. And it's just like you were saying earlier, like these people's, they're really dealing with the thick of the thick. And I feel like that has to go with the degeneration of their bloodline in these hybrid programs. And
Yeah, I agree. It's dark stuff and it's hard to get out of, but with Christ, he has the power because it says that every knee shall bow on in heaven, on the earth, and inside the earth. And that is repeated 3 times through the Bible, that it's actually inside the earth. So
yeah,
they acknowledge the authority of the God of heaven inside the earth. So when people can get um, can get a hold of that, they can find freedom
yeah,
from it.
yeah, yeah. I also think there's a component or an element of having to overcome the hybridized parts of yourself
But
too, right? Like you have to, oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I have to just deal with something real quick. Sorry.
No worries. Everything
Uh,
okay?
yeah, everything's fine. I just something on with the stove.
Oh.
Um,
I'll just finish my
okay,
point. That
sure.
there's an element of also having to overcome the hybridized genetics within the self, and I almost wonder if that's not what awakening is about. And on some level, is like the soul finally overcomes the reptilian part of the body, the more carbon-based structures, the reptilian part of the brain, and is able to transcend the blockages, the seals, and the implants that whatever, hybrid race that they're dealing with has implanted, because we do know that there's different seal sets in those implant systems according to different races. Like the
Yes,
Anunnaki have their own implants, the Draco have their own set of implants.
yes, I absolutely agree. And I have a chart here about the implants. Let me get to that. This is just going on about, what happens to abductees, sleep paralysis, and the allergies. I had terrible, I had all this stuff until I got cleared and delivered. I went through all of this. So that's part of an implant is to
Mm.
suppress your immune system and make you very sensitive to certain things and hearing humming sounds, sensitivities to bright lights, blue lights, green lights, yeast infections, allergies to animals. I mean, I had all this stuff. Now I couldn't live without my cats. I have two cats. So, a lot of this is, this is what he came to set us free from. So people look at him and they see religion. They need to look at him and see him as a liberator, like, Messiah, King, kind of like Hercules. I'm just going to flip through this. This was my near-death experience. But when we go through curse breaking, it's like we have access to the courts of heaven. So there's that old Hermetic philosophy, as above, so below. And everything that we have on earth is just a mirror of what is actually in heaven. But you can go, people have the right, okay, spiritual ground, spiritual legal ground right to go to the King of Heaven, okay, and petition and ask for freedom of this from these beings. You don't have to be, stuck in this for the rest of your life. And
Mm.
there's a couple of things to do. It's not rocket science. It takes some faith. Faith is what you give to it. The rest is just following God's laws, laws of creation, the laws of freedom. And yes, forgiveness is a superpower because without that, you can't really be free mentally, emotionally, spiritually, because that is exactly where they want you. They want you in bitterness. They want you, plotting revenge against your enemy because that's how that's loose. Your body gives off energy, and that's what they come to harvest while you're alive. It's not all about the death trap. It's also the hormones. I mean, I went through this whole thing. And this is in the book because I thought, what is this? It's like I'm like scientifically geared, so I look for patterns. So it's like, what is it with the hormonal cycles of women? So when they cursed Eve, it specifically said pain in childbirth. But women have children, pain-free deliveries now. Okay, so that's kind of changed. But really, what it was the hormonal cycle that starts from adolescence all the way to menopause. And every time those hormones get released, okay, or go up and down, there's loosh, okay, and it's no coincidence, okay, that when a woman is going through PMS or perimenopause or menopause or after birth, these are times when hormones are high. And why do these beings always seem to show up for that? They are harvesting that. And I
Mhm.
think that is the source of the curse. It's not just the childbirth thing, it's the hormonal cycle. So that's why I'm saying deliverance is a process, okay? And we have the power to overcome this through Christ. And like, we need to wake up to break generational trauma. I'm a chain breaker. The buck stops here. When I finally had my daughter, that's when I became aware of this, that I didn't want to pass this stuff down to her and to my future descendants, God willing. Um,
Yes.
so yeah, the buck stops here. And this is spiritual warfare, and we can do this. Okay. Black sheeps are like lions in the family. So when a person in a family system is considered the outcast, the black sheep, they're really the lion of that system because they're the ones that are given that task to kind of break the family trance or the family curse. The psychologists call it a trance. Spiritually, it's a curse, but it can be broken. And all the curses on Eve, okay, and the wives of the fallen angels from Archangel Michael, which I find so ironic that New Agers call on Archangel Michael, and yet he only listens to the King of Heaven. He takes orders from the Lord, and that's it. Okay, so he's put in charge of Israel, and he intervenes at some from time to time. Okay, here we go. Here's the implants. I finally got to it. So the one that goes, and this is a book that was written anonymously for abductees, and it's a thin little man, but it has all this stuff. So when you get an implant up your nose, which I had, that one, and this was written in this peer-reviewed journal from France, that is the one that goes up into the brain and identifies you as an incubator. Okay, so the nasal implant is for the incubate, is for the women. Okay, there are other implants that are for other reasons. Okay, so here we go. So they're doing different things, and these on the bottom. These are different hybrids they're illustrated, but this is kind of like what I saw, the one on the bottom right, except she had white wispy hair, but that was her facial feature, the big blue eyes. Mm-hmm. So, you know, people who come in contact, close proximity with alien technology, or they see a ship, then this stuff starts to happen. Okay. And that came out of the Pentagon. All right. So this is like real stuff, radiation burns, PTSD, missing pregnancies, all of the above. So where are they? That's why I have this on the cover, because the alien is implanting the woman. And so they put the implants in the ears, they put them in the navel, they have different parts of the body where they stick them for different reasons. Like you're part of a program, okay? And they're also spiritual limitation devices, which means that they don't let you grow and evolve spiritually because they're keeping you in a certain type of bondage electronically. So I illustrated this because everybody knows about the chakra system, but most people don't realize that it's front and back, that it's like this circular motion that goes in the front of your body as well as the back of your body. So if things get put into these portals, because they talk about the planet being having portals, people are portals. People, human beings are portals, vessels, containers. So they use this, the opening, which is why it's so important, to have a strong spiritual life, to keep and have Christ around you, because he is your shield and your rear guard. And why does it say that? It actually says that in the Torah, that the Lord is our shield, which you always imagine in the front of you, and the rear guard behind you to protect your energy. Okay. And all this has to do with, being modified by electronic means and crystalline technology. And, we have this 7-layered auric body system, and most of us aren't aware of it, but they are. They know exactly how we're wired. So this is my illustration of what I saw when I looked at this, and my eyes were opened to this 7-layer body and how these things get in. Okay. And how when people are just a mess for all kinds of things, but it can be unraveled. Okay. So whether it's PTSD, victim consciousness, past life trauma, contracts and agreements made with the dark forces in another timeline. Maybe people do it all the time in this life, where they get deceived. They think they're working with good people, and then all of a sudden they turn on them. And it's the same thing with the dark forces. They don't always say, "Hi, we're the dark forces and we're here to make a deal." People make deals with dark forces all the time, thinking that they're light. So there's that. And holes in the auras and all kinds of, manipulation and abuse of our energy field. And this creates all kinds of physical problems because there is a science related fact to the mind body spirit connection that, okay, the body is temporary, but if the mind and the spirit messed up, then the body doesn't have a chance. But if the mind and the spirit can get clear, the body will follow. So that's the healing, that's the path to healing. And the brain stem. So they go after the brain stem. Okay. And there is no coincidence that that brain stem, the medulla oblongata, is also called the reptilian brain. So um, there's books written about all this, and this is our fear, flight, or freeze place. And that's how they control people. If they put an implant there, or you've got something in your spinal cord, in your brainstem, in your neck, but all this can be, people can get free of this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's no, this is amazing. Thanks for sharing this. I think we're getting close on time though, because we're coming at about 2 hours. So this is an
We
amazing,
we've
uh,
had a lot to catch up on.
yeah, yeah. Well, and we can always do, part two or something. Because I mean, this is an abundance of just amazing material. So you're amazing. Thank you for showing us
Thank
all of
you.
this and putting this together. Yeah, but I agree with the implant healing that you do have the ability to remove the implants. There's implant removal protocols. This is something that I teach about in my book.
Yes, I
And
saw that. That's great.
yeah, and a lot of people ask, they'll be like, well, you can't see them. How do you do this? It's kind of like it's getting comfortable with your third eye and it's getting comfortable with interpreting psychic perception and it's getting comfortable with practicing the removals as well. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, you have to practice, you have to try, you have to attempt it, and sometimes you have to do it over and over again too. I mean, before you feel like you're actually fully cleared and that you're able to, actually really tune into the types of implants that you specifically have because it is different for every single person. Every single person's field is going to have a different kind of implant that's there. We do have universal ones that are seen like familiarly within same bloodlines, but like the picture you had, I mean, you had a bunch of different types of implant. I mean, and that's really what it is that the negative ones that are installing the implants, they are fully utilizing their interdimensional telepathy and telekinetic skills. They're fully utilizing the holographic architecture. This is, what we need to be able to open to for us to be able to understand what they're using against us, so to speak. So
I agree.
it's a process, but this is what we're being guided to attain through the ascension process, through this opening of our field, and through the Christ consciousness resurrection within. That you spoke about how this is like truly is the medicine to all of this. At the end of the day,
Yes.
I truly believe that as well. That it's the divine law underneath it all that um, is coming forward in new ways and it's evolving and we're all aligning more to the unity of this within. So
Well, we hope so.
it's
Some people are, some people are still kind of Luddards, left behind, stuck in the past, and maybe that's also because of their implantation that they don't even know that they're implanted.
yes, yes. But this is where people like me and you come into place because we're here to educate. And I think that's
Yes,
really ultimately what's lacking is education. And
I agree.
yeah,
Yep,
so
knowledge is power. And we're in the age of disclosure, so there's no excuse for ignorance anymore because the knowledge is out there, you know. There's so much to uncover. Of course, we can't do it all in an hour or two, but yeah, I had this whole other half. I just have to organize the slides better. But you know, the Epstein thing, I just want to end by saying is part of alien disclosure. It is not alien disclosure. What is coming next is not a distraction, it's a continuation. So if people can see it that way, then they won't be so caught up in all this denial and cognitive dissonance and TDS and, oh,
It's really interesting that you say that because I literally just heard someone say the other day that the alien disclosure files would be handled similarly as the Epstein files, that they're gonna redact certain things, they're gonna only put certain things out, this and that. So what a correlation that you've made. That and it totally makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, I think we deserve to know who the beings are. We don't need to know how the tech works. Leave that for the companies who are patented it. It's all compartmentalized with the aerospace companies, which is why the government can't do FOIA with a lot of this stuff, Freedom of Information Act, because they've compartmentalized it and delegated it to these private aerospace companies, which is their way of protecting the tech. But
Hmm.
there's so much more to learn from this than just the tech, like who are these beings?
Oh my gosh, even as you're saying this, I just tuned into like the tunnels of like Epstein Island and like that being like the main force breeder line connected to the human trafficking and connected to getting some of these breeders into underwater facilities and just off-planet force breeding units and things like this. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and
just coming through.
that's just a slice of it. That's like not the whole enchilada, but even, I mean, this is, Mel Gibson even talked about it because he's in Hollywood, that they all were doing this, all these satanic rituals to create adrenochrome because they believe that that is the the fountain of youth. So, what gets basically disclosed is the same thing, that there is this secret program and they're force breeding. But this is the niece, by the way, who basically outed the whole family for worshiping Moloch. Um, so yeah, I mean, this is not just Epstein's Island, but the Getty Museum and all this stuff that was going on underground. I mean, it's just we've been living with this for so long that
Yeah.
people have become numb to it. They just kind of deny, this goes into denial. They ignore that it's happening, but it's really, parents, humanity's worst nightmare to know that your children, and some of these women are being used to breed children that they never get a birth certificate, a social security number, so they're out of the system, so they could do whatever they want with them, so nobody even knows that they've gone missing.
Well, that's what I think is so dangerous about all this is we really need to look at the hospitals and the way these systems work, right? Because I mean, obviously, someone goes into a hospital to have a child, they're immediately taking thumbprints, fingerprints, footprints, getting the blood of the child, throwing their genetics into their alien hybrid databases. I mean, your infant is probably already stacked with implants leaving that hospital that they've already coded to its alien genetic DNA code.
Absolutely. How do they know what's in the injections? The first thing they do is inject them with the vitamin K and other things. They get vaccinated before they're even like 2 days old.
Yeah.
You talked about the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch tells that the fallen angels showed women how to do abortions, and that's in Enoch 69:12. So abortions isn't anything new.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
In
all
the
there.
Bible, abortions are in the Bible.
It's
That is
in Enoch.
contradicting. That
Book
is,
of Enoch, 69, verse 12. This is practiced and taught to men. This is he who showed the children of men all the wicked smitings of spirits and demons and the smitings of the embryo in the womb, that it may pass away. And they taught women how to do it.
wow.
So it's not a new concept for us. And this is all part of, spiritual legal ground you know, and this has been going on forever. Here's an implant, one more before you close, because I wanted to share this. This one is called the cruciform implant. And this is the counterfeit religious spirit, the religious implant that makes people fundamental and absolutely crazy, where they can't allow new information in, and the cognitive dissonance is so strong with people with this one. So if you ever see it, it looks like this picture on the top right is from the movie Mission Impossible: The Dead Reckoning, which was from 2023. That was a key, which is a cruciform, a 3D cruciform, but that's what it looks like. It's a 3D cruciform. So it's like, and they stick it into your DNA.
Yes, I've seen these. I have a picture. I have almost a picture of almost the same thing, but that's
Goodness,
exactly how I'm
that's
seeing
why
it.
I'm asking you.
T-shaped implant that goes in between each strand. They place like into all the strands and every
Yeah.
single in between them.
See, this is why we had to connect. I mean, not many people get this, but you do. You're a sister. You get it. Thank you for understanding that, because this is what's behind the crazy fundamentalism, and it's in Christianity, it's in Islam, it's in Judaism, it's in Hinduism. It's like,
Mm,
and also, the people who come out with the stigmata, it's in them. So
yeah.
like they have stigmata where all of a sudden they start bleeding, where, like as if they were being crucified on their wrists and their feet. And then they have like claw marks up and down the spine, like some reptilian creature just like scratch them with their sharp claws. They have this too. So they think it's good. So that's how the implant distorts and creates these illusions that they're like, chosen for something, or they're they're suffering for everyone, or this victim
Mhm,
consciousness. It's
mhm.
not natural.
I
And
feel like for women, like that whole carrying the grief of the world thing, how we
yes,
have a difficult time, I think, transmuting all of the atrocities on this planet. When I notice women especially really will come in with a really strong female crucifixion binding that just disallows them from being able to render any of that grief or suffering to source and actually share that burden, you know? So I honestly think that's what keeps the Black Madonna like overlay
uh-huh.
locked locked in the divine feminine's template and has molded itself into the black goo goddess, which is where they've synthesized the womb or have um yeah, just created faulty circuitry through the womb. And it's a part
Oh,
of the womb hijacking, right? Like there's
yes. Yes. Well
yes.
said. Well said. Yes. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really messed up. But if we can start just through consciousness and education, getting people to look at this, then they can start seeing, and asking God, like,
Yeah.
show me where this is in me. Help me, point it out, pull it out. Help me to get free. I mean, we are not sitting ducks here. We do have we have a path of salvation, freedom, and deliverance, and we can be free. We will be free when heaven comes to earth. All this is done. This is the old system, the old when we and it says we will remember it no more.
Yeah.
So
Oh
that's
my goodness, this has been so enlightening and so just amazing. I love this. I know we're gonna get just so many likes and comments and shares with this one. I think people are really gonna resonate with the depth that you brought to the table with all this.
Thank
Um,
you very much for
yeah,
having me. Sorry it went over so long, but
that's okay. It's gonna be a long one. I think what I'll do is I'll break it up into some smaller clips for social media and things like that. And everyone watching, I really recommend that you go. And how can everyone find you and your books?
I'm at who's who in the cosmic zoo.com, and also spirituallydiscerning.com. And all my books are on Amazon in all formats. So I'm in Audible. All the books are in Audible,
Mm,
Kindle, and paperback now.
wow, that's awesome. So you went through and did the whole Audible with your books. Oh, I love that. It's you doing reading them?
It's a female voice that sounds like me,
Okay.
sort of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that would have been a lot of work for you to do that, actually.
Yeah,
You have seven, just really, your books are big. They're
yeah.
loaded. They're loaded. Yeah. You're like an incredible researcher, philosopher, prophet, sacred vision holder, all of it, I would say. So yeah, you're pretty incredible.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for watching. We love you all, and till the next one.
Love you too. Thank you. God bless.